There are many factors that influence the potential effects that underwater sounds may have on marine animals, which affects how scientists may monitor, measure, and mitigate those potential effects. How loud a sound source is, its location, the frequency of the sound produced, the sound level received by an animal, and the distributions and current activities of the species near the source are all factors that must be considered in what is called the ecological risk assessment process. The ecological risk assessment process is how scientists and decision makers work through the potential risks of human activities. The first stage is to define the problem. This involves determining what might cause effects. The next stage involves two steps: estimating the probability of an animal being exposed to the problem, and, based on that exposure, determining the types of ecological effects that might be expected. Based on these results, the risk of an ecological effect can be estimated. Scientists and decision makers then work together to determine what actions might be taken to reduce or eliminate any potential ecological effects. These actions are called mitigation, and what can be done to measure or monitor the effects. Let's walk through the ecological risk assessment process using a real-world example: the Acoustic Thermometry of Ocean Climate Project, or ATOC project. The ATOC project was designed to measure water temperatures between sound sources off Hawaii and California, and receivers throughout the North Pacific Ocean by relating sound speed to water temperature. In this example, the transmission of sound was defined as the problem in the first step of the ecological risk assessment process. This example will focus on the potential effects of the ATOC sound source deployed off Hawaii on humpback whales around the island of Kauai. Once sound from the ATOC source was defined as the problem, the next step was to estimate the humpback whale's exposure to the sound field. A source's sound field is a snapshot in time of the level of sound at different distances and depths as the sound travels away from the source. The geographic location and the time of the year that the source will be used, as well as the intensity and frequency of the source, affect how the sound travels through the water. Sound interacts with the sea surface and the seafloor, especially when sound travels into shallow water, as it does here in this example, moving towards the island of Kauai. This image is a cross-section, or slice through the water column. The color-coded background is the estimated sound field from one ATOC signal. The red colors are more intense, the blue less intense. The ATOC sound source is on the lower left, and the gray represents the seafloor. As the sound travels away from the sound source, the sound level gradually decreases. To calculate the amount of exposure, the duration of the sound and its rate of transmission must be considered. In the case of the ATOC sound source, it produced a 20-minute signal every 4 hours on every fourth day. In addition to considering the sound field, scientists must also consider whether or not a particular species is found in the area at the time of year that the sound source is being used. In this example, scientists estimated the number and distribution of humpback whales around the main Hawaiian Islands throughout the year. In particular, researchers conducted aerial surveys to document the locations of humpback whales around Kauai in 2002, when the source was not transmitting, which is shown here with the blue circles. From these data, researchers determined that humpback whales preferred to be in nearshore waters less than 200 meters in depth. After the sound field of a source was determined, and marine mammal distribution was estimated, scientists combined the two to estimate the potential exposure of humpback whales to the sounds of the ATOC source. The color-coded background shown here is the sound level to which the humpback whales were estimated to be exposed. The ATOC sound source is still depicted on the lower left. Gray represents the seafloor, and the black dots are the predicted locations of humpback whales. The next step of the ecological risk assessment process is to determine what types of ecological effects might be expected based on the predicted exposure levels. A variety of methods are being applied or developed to help measure the potential effects of underwater sound on marine animals. These include hearing sensitivity studies, visual observations, acoustic monitoring, tagging studies, and controlled exposure experiments. An underwater sound does not affect an animal if it cannot sense it. To determine whether or not sound of a specific frequency can be detected at a given level, scientists need to know the quietest sounds that the animals can sense at different frequencies, which is called the hearing threshold. Researchers estimate that humpback whales are sensitive to low frequencies similar to their vocalizations. Humpback whales vocalize as low as 50 Hz. it is very likely they could hear the frequencies at which the ATOC source transmitted. The final step of the ecological risk assessment is to estimate the potential effects at the sound levels received by the animals. If an animal can hear the sound produced, the sound may prevent the animal from hearing other important sounds, such as calls from other individuals. This is called masking. The sound might also cause an animal to change its behavior. Responses to different sounds vary dramatically, from no response at all, to minor, momentary reactions, to profound changes in behavior. Scientists conducted studies to discover if humpback whales around Kauai exhibited behavioral responses, changed their vocalizations, and/or if their distribution and abundance in the area changed in response to the ATOC sound source. This image shows the location of humpback whales during 2002, when the source was not transmitting, as blue circles. The red triangles show the location of humpback whales during 2003, when the source was transmitting. No biologically significant effects on the humpback whales were discovered, although after intensive statistical analyses, subtle effects were detected, such as the distance and time between successive humpback whale surfacings increased slightly with increasing sound received levels. Based on these results, scientists and decision-makers determined that no mitigation was needed, but monitoring would continue throughout the ATOC project to make sure humpback whales were not being adversely affected. Many factors influence the potential effects underwater sounds may have on marine animals and how scientists monitor, measure, and mitigate sound sources. By using the ecological risk assessment process, scientists and decision-makers use a scientific process to estimate the potential effects of sound sources on marine life and determine ways to reduce or eliminate the potential ecological effects.